Ole Miss is going to beat the Arkansas Razorbacks. We have the answer key before Saturday's test.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I am your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we're talking about why Ole Miss will beat the Arkansas Razorbacks. I will give you my official game prediction along with a couple of props that you might want to follow along with as the matchup unfolds. Then we'll dive into the biggest fear Lane Kiffin faces against the Hogs. And believe it or not, it's not Taylen Green, even though he's a really good player. We'll tell you all about that as well. But first, we'll start with the player that I think is primed for a breakout game, running back Kewan Lacy, against the Arkansas Razorback defense that is dealing with some problems up front. Lacy has the perfect opportunity to kind of go off and be the biggest offensive weapon on the field. All of that and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We're free and available on all the podcast platforms and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a big shout out to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every single detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned for later in the episode highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. All right. So Ole Miss is likely going to win this game. I mean, they're favored by 7.5 points. You talk about the line movement and all that. They're still favored by more than a touchdown in the game. So Ole Miss is likely going to win this game. But why are they going to win this game? Listen, if you do not play clean, if you turn the ball over, if you do the stuff that happened at Kentucky, Ole Miss will lose to the Arkansas Razorbacks. So let me just go ahead and say that right off the top. That is not expected to happen, but that is a possibility of something that could happen. Now, Ole Miss, the way it sits right now, is a pretty good favorite in this game. Arkansas needs a special performance to win the game. Ole Miss can win the game just by playing clean. Ole Miss can win the game just by being a good version of themselves. Arkansas needs Taylen Green or Mike Washington or somebody like that to absolutely go off. And Bobby Petrino getting into his bag, that's something that's keeping Lane Kiffin up at night. I will tell you about that in the next segment. Listen, this will be the game where Ole Miss limits explosive running back runs, which is the key to Bobby Petrino's offense. It's not Taylen Green. Everybody talks about Taylen Green and what he's done against Alabama A&M and Arkansas State. But it isn't Taylen Green that makes the Bobby Petrino and the Arkansas offense go. It's Mike Washington. He is the person you have to limit. You have to limit explosive runs for Mike Washington and make Arkansas one-dimensional. Put the game on Taylen Green's shoulder, and he will throw you the ball multiple times in the game. He had 2 interceptions against Arkansas State. He will make mistakes. But to do that, you have to earn the right to rush him by stopping Mike Washington. That's a matchup that Ole Miss needs to do well in and win. And third of all, Kewan Lacy is the best player in the game for either team, potentially. Ole Miss will win this game running the ball. And running the ball against Arkansas's defensive line is where we're likely going to start here. Listen, we had John Neighbors on the show just yesterday, and they mentioned that Arkansas has a defensive line problem. The first drive against Alabama A&M, and yes, you heard that correctly, they went straight down the field, ran it down Arkansas's throat, and ended up getting in the end zone. He said it was the worst drive he's ever seen Arkansas give up. And Sam Pittman said about the same thing. Arkansas has a defensive line problem. They're better in the secondary. They're pretty good at linebacker. But they have a little bit of a defensive line problem. So that is a salvo-saving grace, potentially, for the Ole Miss offensive line that I think is doing well. Todd Wade thinks they have a leverage problem. Bill Flowers is genuinely worried about that unit. This is kind of a potentially get-right game. Now, if it doesn't happen, if they can't run the ball, if they're getting a ton of pressure on Austin Simmons, this team is not going to go as far as everybody thinks they are. But if they handle their responsibilities and make their blocks and things like that, Patrick Kudos has a better game. This offensive line against their defensive line, it's advantage Ole Miss. And in the Southeastern Conference, it's usually working out to where if your offensive line is better than their defensive line and your defensive line is better than their offensive line, you're probably in pretty good shape. And seeing that, the trench game, the advantage that Ole Miss has at both levels, that makes you worry about a special performance. And that's what you're hearing over the course of this week. You're hearing a lot about Taylen Green and what he can do. And he is a great athlete. Don't get me wrong. 10 touchdowns in 2 games, that's something to crow about. But 6 touchdowns against Alabama A&M, the team that the year before gave up 52 points and 340 yards and 4 touchdowns to Peyton Thorne, I just kind of put that as an outlier. I'm looking more at the Arkansas State stats, in which case Taylen Green had a remarkably similar game to what Austin Simmons did against Georgia State. Sunbelt game's kind of a wash. So it comes down to Mike Washington. It comes down to Kewan Lacy. It's not going to come down to the quarterbacks in this game. It's going to come down to the running backs. And Ole Miss has the better offensive line. Ole Miss has the better defensive line, and they have the better running back in this game. Kewan Lacy, he is a long strider type running back. He runs upright a little bit. With him going around the corner, it's something to see. He's hard to bring down. He has elite contact balance. I think he is the weapon that is the difference in this game. I think it's going to be closer than the experts think, as Lee Corso used to say. I just genuinely think that Ole Miss has a better team than Arkansas, and they have to make mistakes to get Arkansas into the game. You either have to have a super special performance like we've seen teams do against Ole Miss, if we're going to be honest about it, or Ole Miss has to throw interceptions, get stopped on 4th down, not kick field goals, not taking points, not playing like the favorite. That is how you make it to where Arkansas is in the game. Again, Arkansas is better than they were a year ago. It doesn't take as much of gifts to get them into the game to where they can beat you this year. You have a second-year quarterback with Bobby Petrino. You have a better secondary, and the linebackers are pretty good. It just goes to the line of scrimmage that is problematic. And I know that eats at Sam Pittman, who is a former offensive line guy that had a bit of a reputation of being a great offensive line coach. Ole Miss will win this game because of the trench play. They will win this game running the football. I expect to see a little bit more of Trinidad Chambliss, not necessarily because he's going to be forced into action or anything like that, but because you're not going to run a quarterback with a sprained ankle. So I think some quarterback run game, there's going to be a package in the offense this week for Trinidad. Still going to be Austin Simmons' team. I talked to multiple people last night. They feel pretty good about that. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Ole Miss will beat Arkansas because they're better on the offensive line. They're better on the defensive line. This is an old school SEC game. Now, Bobby Petrino is really good, and he will do some things in this game that will drive you absolutely bonkers. That's what Bobby Petrino does. But Ole Miss should win this game. Anyway, so the biggest fear for Lane Kiffin going into this Arkansas game is not Taylen Green. It's the Hogs' ability to grind down the game in the backfield. Mike Washington, explosive plays. Arkansas wants to lean on those explosive plays to open up the play action for Bobby Petrino down the field, make Taylen Green a little bit more of a weapon. If Ole Miss can't hold their ground up front, especially against the explosive runs, then Green doesn't have to be the star. This is exactly what keeps Lane Kiffin up at night. We'll tell you how Ole Miss can counter it and why Ole Miss is stopping the Arkansas Razorbacks' physicality. That's the real key next. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move the crowd, the culture, keeps the game moving forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward was Kewan Lacy, who had 138 yards and a touchdown in the Rebels road opener at Kentucky. After a slow start, Ole Miss took over the game, outscoring the Kentucky Wildcats 30-13 to end after falling behind 10-0. And so much of that was on Kewan Lacy. Big run after big run was able to move that game forward for the Ole Miss Rebels. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning, and there's more to like in every highlight, just like there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast and whatever audio podcast you're listening to. Give it a 5-star review. It costs absolutely nothing, but it keeps all of this free, honestly. If you want more, join the Insiders program on the subtext link down below. No trolls. 14-day free trial, and the easiest way ever to give you a cancel. Give it a try. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Nearly every team, college or pro, they're ready for you right here on Locked On Ole Miss and the Locked On Podcast Network. So check them out as well. Now, I will tell you this right now. There is one thing that is keeping Lane Kiffin up at night. And, it has nothing to do with Taylen Green. Has absolutely nothing to do with him. It has to do with Mike Washington, the running back that for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And this is the reason why. He had 9 carries, 116 yards, and a touchdown against the Arkansas State Red Wolves on Saturday. He's the 4th leading rusher in the Southeastern Conference. Taylen Green is getting all the headlines, but Mike Washington could very well be the best running back for the Arkansas Razorback and maybe the best offensive player, even over Taylen Green. We talked with John Neighbors on the show yesterday. He talked about how, listen, if you take away the explosive runs to make it to where Arkansas becomes one-dimensional and Taylen Green has to win the game with his arms, he can't really do that. Whenever his arms and his legs are together, the legs are still the better piece of Taylen Green's game. So it is imperative to stop Mike Washington, not give up explosive runs. Ole Miss gave up 5 explosive runs against the Georgia State Panthers. They gave up about 5 explosive runs to the Kentucky Wildcats. You can't do that against Arkansas. They need to cut that down to 2 or 3 on Saturday night to Mike Washington so the defense doesn't get kind of turned in knots. Listen, the important thing to remember about the Bobby Petrino offense is he needs the explosive runs to tie your defense up at knots. He's a wizard at play action. If you remember what he was like way back when he was an offensive coordinator at Auburn or head coach at Louisville, if you remember those offenses, he was a wizard at play action even then. The game has changed so much in 20 years. He has adapted with it and adapted that play action game. So what's keeping Lane Kiffin up at night is the matchup between Bobby Petrino and Pete Golding, if you want to get down to brass tacks on it. Bobby Petrino in 2023 in the second half turned Max Johnson into the second coming of a left-handed Tom Brady in the second half and almost brought Texas A&M back to win that game. It took a Xavier Harris blocked field goal for Ole Miss to win that game. That was an 11-win Ole Miss team that year. Last year, despite playing most of the game with a backup quarterback, he scored 31 points against Pete Golding and Ole Miss. Now, granted, Ole Miss might be in prevent and something might have been going on behind the scenes the way they were setting it up because they were so far ahead. He still put 31 points on the defense that led the Southeastern Conference in points allowed and potentially had the best defense ever at Ole Miss as far as dominance. Bobby Petrino over the last couple of matchups has had Pete Golding's number. So it will be on Pete Golding to stop this, to settle it down. And the way you do that is to control the run game. If they get it going, it's going to be problematic for whoever is going up against the Arkansas Razorbacks. Ole Miss has to stop the run game and make Arkansas one-dimensional. So we will see exactly how that goes in the game against the Arkansas Razorbacks on Saturday night. Stopping the run game, stopping Bobby Petrino. We always talk about where Ole Miss needs to be or what is going to happen with Arkansas, and everybody's talking about Taylen Green. No, it's Mike Washington is the player that should be circled all around, underlined, whatever you do to identify a player. Mike Washington should be that dude. He is the key to Arkansas's offense over the course of this game. Taylen Green's great. Wide receiver's great. There's a lot of weapons on Arkansas's offense. If you don't stop Mike Washington, you are in trouble. Whenever you're dealing with a Bobby Petrino offense, it is similar to the triple option. There's always something that you must absolutely stop. If you remember the old wishbone days or what the service academies run now, it's like, hey, if you don't stop the fullback dive, it's going to be a long day. You have to stop the fullback dive first before you can deal with the quarterback and the running back. Bobby Petrino, you have to stop the running game first so you don't have to deal with the play action toys that Bobby Petrino can do. That is what is keeping Lane Kiffin up. And if Ole Miss slips up in this game, it is because of that. You will see, you look down, it's like, oh man, Mike Washington had 130 yards rushing. And Taylen Green had a very high percentage, even though he's an iffy passer. He's known for kind of throwing the other team the ball from time to time. So we'll see exactly how that looks for Arkansas. Bobby Petrino compared Mike Washington to Niall Davis. Remember back in the Bobby Petrino head coach days at Arkansas, Niall Davis was one of the running backs. He was a pretty good player. He was a real good player if we're going to be honest about it. So we'll see exactly how that goes. In our final segment, it's time to hit the board. Let's talk best bets for this matchup and lock in our prediction. From point spreads to totals and a couple of player props worth watching, we'll walk through where the smart money is and how Ole Miss stacks up. All of that coming up right after this. You know, when I'm on top of my hydration, I notice everything works better. My energy, my mood, my focus, even my skin. But getting enough fluids every day isn't always the most easy thing to do. That's why I've been loving Drip Drop. Drip Drop is doctor developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids more quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of the leading sports drink. My go-to flavor right now is cherry limeade. Honestly, it's a game changer after my hot walks down here in Florida's sun. It's made it all a better experience. It's pretty amazing. Right now, Drip Drop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to dripdrop.com and use the promo code Locked On College. That's all one word, Locked On College. It's almost the weekend. It's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving a lot more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. So let's break it all down. For Ole Miss, Harrison Wallace delivered in a big way. It was 4th and 1. Ole Miss was down 10-0. Everything was going sideways. When the pressure was on, he came through. No hesitation, no delay, with a 55-yard reception. And if you've been watching week after week, this performance wasn't a fluke. Harrison Wallace is on his streak, and he looks to continue that streak on Saturday versus the Arkansas Razorbacks. And just like Harrison Wallace, who delivered for the Ole Miss Rebels, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order, stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply, and the promo period is through 11/18. Let's get into some of the bets and props from this game and give my official prediction as well. Listen, this game the players to watch is exactly the same, in my opinion. You look at Austin Simmons. He has to deal with the ankle and all of that. How is he going to bounce back, even though that is going on? He is definitely a player to watch in this game. Then there's Kewan Lacy, the running back that, in my opinion, has a chance to be the best player on the field for Ole Miss and potentially for Arkansas, if we're going to be honest about it. And lastly is Princewill Umanmielen. And I thought about Taylen Perkins for this position because, we've been talking about Taylen Perkins week after week after week, but this feels like a spy situation. Perkins is going to be spying Taylen Green more often than he's not. So that will be interesting. So who is forcing the action on Taylen Green? Who is playing the defensive line position that is trying to get back there? And I think it's going to be Princewill Umanmielen. I think Deshaun Womack has a chance to have a big role as well in this game. The important thing, like I said in the last segment, is not giving up explosive runs to the running back. Taylen Green can get loose a couple of times. Taylen Green can complete a couple of big passes. You cannot let Mike Washington beat you, because Mike Washington, if he goes off, Mike Washington will beat you. Now, if you want to look at the keys that I put out earlier in the week, Arkansas is the best offensive team that Ole Miss has faced this season, so a quick start is important. Ole Miss has started slowly each of their first two games. The scoring margin is 7 points for Ole Miss, which they scored in the first 39 seconds of the season. After that, the other team has scored one touchdown, is 7-7. After that, Ole Miss's offense is really good, and the score margin, everything is really good. But Ole Miss needs to get off in a quick start in this game because, as we talked to John Neighbors yesterday, Bobby Petrino is pretty good at scripting. Again, keep the explosive down in the run game. Keep them to a minimum. Bobby Petrino needs those. You can stop the offense, but you need to stop the run so he doesn't do the play action, because his stuff play action-wise is freaking brilliant, and he can tie you up in knots. And Ole Miss must play a clean game, because every turnover and penalty can help Arkansas beat you. That's the keys that we did on Wednesday. And I honestly believe them, if we're going to be real about it. I think Ole Miss has a really good shot to win this game. If Ole Miss just plays an A game and Arkansas plays an A game, Ole Miss is going to win the game. But the line has steadily gone down over the course of the week. I think Ole Miss opened as a 10.5-point favorite. The over-under was at 60.5, so it hasn't changed that much. But the betting line has gone down to just a shade over a touchdown. Now, it's still over a touchdown. Arkansas has to get beat by more than a touchdown in the game for Ole Miss to cover. So even though it's tightened up, it hasn't really tightened up in that situation. And a lot of that has to do with the uncertainty around Austin Simmons and what's going on and what Ole Miss is going to be able to do throwing the football and how the offense is going to look and all of that stuff. It's really interesting to me. You look at my prediction of this game, I do not think Ole Miss covers in this game. I think Ole Miss wins by 7 points. I think it's going to be 28-21, but this is the difference. I think it's going to be 28-14, and they're going to give up a touchdown late. It's going to be kind of like the end of the Kentucky game, but Ole Miss wins 28-21 in this game behind the running with multiple touchdowns of Kewan Lacy. He turns out to be the star of this game. And like Kentucky, where Ole Miss ran the ball 2 out of every 3 times in that game, I think something similar might happen in this game just because of the sprained ankle that Austin Simmons is dealing with. The other stuff like the hip and all of that, nobody that I've talked to has heard anything about that. It's all the telephone game and people talking about it. But Ole Miss should win this game 28-21. Now, some props in this game that I've mentioned. I think Kewan Lacy is going to score 2 touchdowns in this game, north of 100 yards, over 2 touchdowns. And you have a situation where the defensive line for Arkansas has struggled. That's going to force the safeties and the linebackers to run up to try and deal with the running back, and that's going to open up Harrison Wallace, Deshaun Stribling, Caden Lee, those guys in the middle of the field. I think that Arkansas only scores 14 offensive points in this game. One of their touchdowns are an other than offensive touchdown. I think that's a weird way to look at it, but like they return a punt or something like that. This is a weird game, so we'll see exactly how it goes. But that is my prediction there, and I think that the obvious Taylen Green is going to have his worst game of the season. I think Ole Miss's Pete Golding's going to do a number on him. Pete knows that Petrino has gotten the best of him over the last couple of years. I am pretty sure they're going to scheme up some pretty good stuff as well. Remember, in the sack caused fumble that ended up in a defensive touchdown for Ole Miss last year in Fayetteville, it was Taylen Green at quarterback. So they can generate some pressure. That was TJ Daugherty, by the way, that made that sack. So we'll see exactly how it goes. It's going to be a big game for Ole Miss. It really is. If you want to get to Georgia undefeated, this is probably the second biggest obstacle in your way. So we'll see exactly how that goes. Anyway, thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we are the front door of Ole Miss. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps the show and is completely free. Your support means the world to us. Hey, and another big moment for Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV are presenting College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation along two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson and former college star Jesse Holley and Locked On's local experts. The college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. Be safe heading to Oxford if you're going to the game. Hotty toddy to everybody. Remember, analytics are just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you later.